Hello and welcome back to Into the Viya Verse episode 2. This one is about SAS Viya release 2023.0.2, the February release. Grab your cup of coffee and let's get right into it after this awesome new intro. We will start off right where we left off last time, in SAS Information Catalog. We again have a very cool new feature. When you have SAS Viya open in your browser mode, you can quickly copy the asset link directly from the URL bar. But if you have it open as a progressive web app, which I always recommend because you have full screen, you can't easily access that asset link. Of course, you can use the three dots to copy URL, but that's a bit inconvenient. Now we have this new link icon that directly copies the link to your clipboard. And it also adjusts when you go, for example, into the data quality measures of a table and copy the assets there. It still has all that information in there and directly links you deep down into the application. So you don't lose anything in comparison to the URL bar, which is quite awesome and helps you to communicate with others. So let's leave Information Catalog and jump into SAS Studio, where we start off with two new cool steps. The first one can be found under Transform Data and is called Transpose Data. Here I've already prepared a swim lane containing that new step, connected the class dataset from SAS Help, and when we look at the step, you can see the variables to transpose. You can also do group by analysis. You can also specify how the output columns are called and whether or not to keep original label names or names in general. And the same can be done for the output. You can specify which variables should be copied and if you see the results printed to the results tab. That's very handy indeed. So let's run the swim lane and let's have a look at the output of running the step. We are going to output data. And here we can see, of course, the very generic output that's based on the SAS Help class target. But you can see the numbering for each transposed row into a column. Next up, we have a new step that can be found in a new category that has been introduced called statistics way at the bottom. And the new step is called one-way frequency. The one-way frequencies also takes an input table, but as you might suspect, this one generates an output. So you don't have an output table for this one. So let's take a look at the options that we can specify. You again can introduce a filter for this. You can select the analysis variables. You can assign additional roles for frequency count, group by analysis. And you can also dig down further into the options to include more plots or remove plots from the output. And you can also find some information about what procedure is used in the background of the step here. So let's run the step. And this time, because we don't see any tables created, we will go to the results tab. And here you can find the output of the one-way frequencies analysis step. And you can dig through this. Also in SAS Studio, we have gained a new capability when creating custom steps. So let's jump into the rank advanced example to add some additional functionality based on this. When you have a column selector in there, you now have an additional attribute that you can set. It's located under the exclude columns ability. So let's add an additional column selector to our interface. Specify the same input table as the previous selector. And let's scroll to this exclude columns attribute. If we click it, we can then specify that all the columns that are selected in a previous data controller column selector in this case are not included in the selection by this one. And that's pretty handy. So let's go into the preview mode. Let's select an input table. Let's just use SAS help again, and let's use the air table. We will select the air column, and in our second column selector, we don't see that column anymore because it has been selected by the previous selector. And that's pretty handy if you have interdependent columns. You don't have to guide your user through this process and can update your existing custom step with this additional functionality, which is quite nice. And for our last update, we jump into text analytics. And for this, I have prepared a sample program that you can also download from the link in the description. And what we have is a new action set that has been introduced. It's called Text Classifier. And it enables you to train your own text classification model. And it's based on the BERT model provided by Google. And this can be done not only for doing classical text classification in the sentiment space, but of course you can classify any type of data with this just by providing it examples on your data. So let's look at this. I download an example data set from Hugging Face about how Reddit is talking about the Tesla stock. I then go in here and repurpose the provided sentiment score to translate it more into the Reddit lingo of paper hands, diamond hands, and lurkers. I then go about training a model based on this by using the train text classifier action. I specify a seed to have more consistency when I rerun this model. I specify how many epochs I'm going to train. I'm just doing one here to keep just the time low. I specify the chunk size, so how much context is used for each token. And I specify GPU equals false because I don't have a GPU. You don't have to set this as you see in the warning here. If you don't have a GPU available, it will default to the CPU. Then we specify our target variable and where the text is stored. And next we score our classifier. We can look at the results from our training and see how accurate this model is. Of course, just training one epoch is very bad in the model department, but still, it's a very cool new functionality. And if we look at the scored output, it's also very interesting. We see we got a lot of diamond hands in here, so people are talking very positive about the Tesla stock in general, and you can also see the precise score that SAS has assigned for this label, which is very cool. Again, if you want to dig deeper into this, I will leave the link to the documentation down below to get access to all the information about how you can leverage this. And there's also some very handy examples for two-way, three-way, and also something like news categorization classifier based on this new capability. Going on, we have a lot of new cool custom steps that have been made available during February and the end of January. The first one is called CAS Generate Unique IDs, which just does what it says. It generates an ID for you, a unique ID for any CAS table that you have. Next, we can convert character values into varchar values within CAS. Then we have 3 steps that follow after each other that kind of help you to interact with Git if you don't like the visual interface that SAS provides you. We have git clone. We have deletion of a local repository. And you can also list the local repo changes so that you have information about them. And then you also get a nice pre-built VA report that lets you know how your current repository is looking like. Next up, we have a step that can directly import Google Sheets from the publicly available Google Sheets that are out there, just to make another data source available. And finally, we have a second step in the natural language processing category First, we had the profiling text. Now we have the identification of languages that are provided to you. The final four shoutouts go out to this article about how you can save the Python environment requirements more easily with SAS-CTL. Last week, we already talked about the release of our SAS-CTL. Now there's also been provided a cool example that you can follow to get up and running even quicker with this. We have a new release of the SAS Visual Code extension with updated capabilities around shortcuts for your keyboard, so you can more natively interact with running F3 for your code. And also for Apache Airflow, the SAS provider has been officially added to the homepage as an operator, which you can use to automate the running of your SAS Studio flows and jobs in context with all your other processes. And this links, of course, back to the SAS software GitHub repository, where you can make use of this operator, which extends the capabilities of Viya greatly and helps you integrate with your total infrastructure. Thank you and see you next time.